was I dug out a lot of newspaper articles because that's the way we got our information back in the 90s because there was no internet. It's just nothing like this. So I spent a little time up at Staples and scanned in a bunch of newspapers articles that we're going to pull up here in a little bit. And we didn't take a lot of photos back in 91. This is a Polaroid. This is what we had to take photos. And I actually scanned this as well, and I'll be able to pull this up so we can see a little bit more detail. And I don't know, I guess I'll just begin of I don't know. I've practiced this over the week. I've talked to friends about it. I don't know how this is all going to come out, but we're going to try. So in 1991, I was 13 years old. I met my friend Tony, and a little background on him. He was from East Providence, Rhode Island. And that time in the 90s, it was pretty rough. I mean, all major cities have, their issues. But the crime rates, particularly back in the 90s, from what my memory, was really bad, especially where I am so close to the border of Rhode Island. A lot of things have changed. Crime has gone down, but particularly in that time in the 90s, it was really bad. I mean, it was pretty common occurrence if you heard of a murder or stabbing or a crime, a burglary, a robbery. It was pretty common in and around those areas at the time. A lot of drugs, marijuana, cocaine, crack. Heroin wasn't really, it was more the cheap drugs you could get on the streets back then, if you want to call that cheap. So he came from an area of East Providence, Rhode Island. And from what I remember, his mother met a very wealthy gentleman from Massachusetts, and that's where I live. I live very particularly close to the East Providence border. Rhode Island border, I'm sorry. So they eventually got out of Rhode Island, out of the Providence area, and more into the suburbs of Massachusetts, a much, I guess, nicer area, if you would say that at that time. And I lived in a apartment complex building where there's a lot of, particular apartments, single family, single people or small, 3 families, husband, wife, child type of buildings. And we had kind of a common play area in the back. It was just a grassy area. There was a little bit of a berm, and up on that berm was a row of, small pine trees, I guess you would call it, or shrubs. And over in that next yard was this huge mansion house, this big house, something that looked like it built maybe at the turn, at the 1900s or 1920 or something. Beautiful, gorgeous, aesthetically house. Gentleman, obviously, that lived there had a lot of money. The family that lived there had a lot of money. And I remember seeing this kid out there washing cars all the time. I would always look over and, I'd be in the backyard and I'd see him. And naturally, after a while, kids kind of start to talk. And we kind of started talking through the bushes, and we made very, fast friends, if you would say that. And what I can say about Tony was he had incredible charisma right away. He had the type of charisma that you either liked him right away or you hated him right away. And he was just that particular person. And I don't know what happened, but our energy just kind of came together, and we came really brothers really quick. And from what I remember, he had a very rough patch through like middle school, was in kind of like adjustment programs, kind of an attitude type of kid. I mean, you gotta think, this is 91. This is, the height of, MTV is just starting to blow out. We're seeing, gangster rap for the first time. We're following NWA. We're dressing like NWA. Let me pull up this photo just so I can kind of break up some of the conversation really quick. Let me see. Oh, what I do? I screwed my screen up. Hang on, guys. So, this is us in 91. So here's me, little 13 years old, off to the left. I'm not going to disclose the gentleman's name in the middle, but my friend Tony is in white. And this female here, I don't know who scratched out the picture. It could have been an ex-girlfriend or something of one of the guys. But you didn't take a lot of pictures back then. Here I am. Look at this. It's all Raiders gear, and we're in our hammer pants, and it's funny. It's funny. But here I was, these older kids, I'm hanging out, 13 years old, and I have a few more photos of them somewhere, some solo ones, but this is really the only one I could find. Look at me. Of us together. So, like I said, he had some issues in school, was in some kind of adjustment programs, and I think it was good for him and his mom to get out of that area to kind of get him straightened out and not running with these rough kids, and so be it. So like I said, we made fast friends. I started introducing him to a lot of the girls in the building that we lived in. He made, the quickest friends with the ladies, and the even faster enemies with the guys that were trying to chase those girls. And I would say probably in about, we were tight. 91, we were really, really tight, staying at at his house and hanging out like kids did back then. He was very, 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 very overprotective of me. And I always felt the reason he was like that after all these years and thinking about it was, one, I was probably the brother, the little brother he never had, or maybe I was just that kind of purity thing in his life that kept him away from trouble. Because I wasn't really a trouble kid. Yeah, I had an attitude, and you did your little petty stuff as a kid, but um I wasn't doing the things that he was doing or involved in. So I'd say probably at about maybe early 1992-ish, about a year after we met, he started kind of sneaking back to East Providence and kind of hanging back with the kids that he was getting in trouble with, and particularly the gentleman that was in the center of the photo. I'm just gonna get a sip of water here. Sorry, guys. Particularly the gentleman that I showed you in the middle of the photo, and he was trouble. And in that neighborhood, there was some really rough kids, and those particular groups of kids kind of went at each other all the time, and they were chasing each other around and beating the shit out of each other. And I kind of started to see that come around, and my spidey sense went up, and they were driving around in stolen cars and just stuff you don't want to be involved in or be around. So my spidey sense kind of went off, and I said, I'm going to start probably pulling myself out of this, hanging out with these kids. So in about, 92 ends, 93, the early of 93, he kind of runs away from home and starts getting himself kind of more in trouble because he's gone back to Providence at this point. Doesn't come back home. I start not really seeing him anymore, maybe here and there. So there's about 93, and I basically separated myself from the situation. And that time I started to lose contact with him. I mean, here and there, he would pop up. I had eventually moved out of the area across town, but he would always kind of find his way back around and find me in some way. So after all that happens, his mom ends up coming home one day, finding her husband, the gentleman that she was married to in bed with another woman. So that ends up breaking that relationship. And she ends up moving into these apartments called the Meadows. By this time, Tony's really running with some really rough kids, uh, been arrested a few times. The drugs start kind of coming into it. And the strange thing about it is when we were hanging out for like that 3 years, pretty solid, I never saw any drugs, nothing past like pot. I didn't see cocaine or anything like that. We were, drinking and sneaking liquor from the parents' liquor cabinet and shit like that. But I never saw hard drugs, pot maybe every once in a while, something like that. So 1994 is just turning, and about a week before the Super Bowl was January 30th, 1994. Tony, I hadn't seen him in probably a couple months, maybe 3 to 6 months. He kind of pops up one day as I'm getting off the bus to school, and hey, what's up? And how are you? And I'm trying to straighten everything out. I just got out of rehab, and I'm going to be going back to live with my mother, across town. And I want to, I think I remember that he might have had a baby on the way. I can't remember. It's been so long ago. But anyway, he says, well, you should come over for the Super Bowl. Come hang out. I'm back home. I'm getting, I'm straightening up. I'm cut all the kids that I was hanging out with. I'm not getting in trouble anymore. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. Give me a number. Blah, 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 blah. So we get to the Saturday before the Sunday Super Bowl, and my grandfather ends up getting ill, and a call comes to my mom. So that Saturday we leave, go up to Boston. We spend the whole day in Boston, Sunday with him. I don't eventually end up going over to see Tony, which essentially saved my life, because my grandfather being sick essentially saved my life, because on Super Bowl Sunday, my friend was murdered. The thing I always go over in my head now is the thing that was very unclear to me. The two gentlemen that, well, the one that was convicted of murder, and we're going to pull up the articles here in a minute. The one that was convicted of murder, and then the other gentleman that was with him, and I don't know why I'm calling them gentlemen. I'm just guys, I guess boys or whatever. I wasn't sure if they were supposed to be there or they showed up, and that was never really made clear. So before I get the articles here, things that I just remember, going to the funeral, going to the wake. It was crazy, and, a lot of people there. And I remember his mom pulling me aside and saying, and I quote from her, because I can remember, she said, use this experience as tears in her eyes, bawling, use this as an example, and don't turn out like Tony. And something just kind of clicked with me. And from there on out, I just made a pat, I guess, to her and myself, to say, if I ever come across kids that are in trouble like this, I'm just not going to roll with people like this to keep myself out of trouble. And it was just tragic, because deep down inside, he was a very good kid. And that's one thing that everybody said about him. He was a good kid, and he was so charismatic. And he was just he was just so overprotective of me. And I just remember times like when kids picked on me, he's like, all right, fucking go down there, show me who he is. And it's him right there. And he'd fucking deck him and knock the kid out for me. That's just the type of relationship we had. And he was funny. He was just a witty kid and a great kid. And I miss him to death. And like I said, I've suppressed a lot of these, feelings and emotions, but I don't know, something just, I think just coming back into the material that we're doing now, it kind of sparked this back up. And maybe it's good for me to talk about it, because I know I've suppressed a lot of these emotions over the years. But but he was such a great kid. And and for that particular moment in my life, I believe that because I was such a skinny, scrawny kid and a lot of people picked on me, he was my protector. And if there is a God or if there is some avenging angel that looks over us, he was sent here to protect me for those couple of years. And I am ever so grateful for that. Um, I miss him. I do. And I would have loved to see how his life would have turned out. Do I think he would have went through an extremely rough patch in life? Probably. But it would be nice to have him sitting here today and we're doing this together, this podcast, this YouTube stuff. But I miss him a lot. Let me pull up these articles, and this is how we got information back then. So I remember getting the call, and this was really the first bit of information that we got. I redacted a lot of the names and information on here. I'm not going to read through a lot of it because I don't want to. We can go through some of this together. But so the first one that was in our local paper was teen murdered in North. Sorry, guys. A 17-year-old local youth was stabbed to death at the Meadows Apartments apartment complex on Route 1 at about 8:45 Sunday night. No arrests were made, police said, and there were no suspects. The victim, identified as Antonio Cardozo of 314 River Street, suffered multiple stab wounds to the head and body. He was pronounced dead at Sturdy Memorial Hospital in Attleboro about an hour after the assault. Police said that Cardozo ran out of the apartment about 300 feet to another building in the complex, yelling for help. A trail of blood led to the crime scene at 21 Lakeshore Drive to Building A at 17 Lakeshore Drive, where the victim was found by residents, police said. North Attleboro Police Chief John D. Coyle said, Jr. said, today the police found evidence that the victim had drugs in the apartment. And this is why I said that I never saw really any hard drugs. And there was cocaine involved in this. I don't know the level of that. I don't think I've just ever really gone down that path. I think I might have heard some stuff back in the day, but it was never really truly explained. No weapons were found on Sunday night. Coyle said the police were continuing to search the area today. The Meadows Apartments complex is located here next to Falls Pond. There's several buildings. Coyle said Cardozo was at his mother's apartment, Unit E, where he was stabbed. His mother, Ogla, was not at home at the time, police said. The police chief said victim lived with his stepfather, Leo Chouanier, on River Street, but also stayed sometime at his mother's. Detective Gould and Sergeant Dawes are investigating with the state troopers from the district attorney's office. Let me pull some of the chats up real quick. Supernaturals here said West Coast Canada in the house. Thank you. Teresa says, wow. And Lee is in the house. Hello, Lee. Thank you so much for the hugs. I appreciate that. So we had the first article that was out, and then that Tuesday, they had suspects. Teens held in murder. Cocaine led to fatal fight, North Attleboro police say. Suspects leaving the station. Blank of 16, East Providence, Rhode Island, also who was accused of stabbing Antonio Cardozo, 17, to death Sunday at the North Attleboro apartment, is driven from North Attleboro Police Headquarters to Attleboro District Court in a cruiser this morning. At the left, police escort, I'm sorry, I didn't redact this name, of Providence from the station. This morning, blank, who was attending North Attleboro High School under a false address, is charged with being an accessory after the murder. The two were arrested Monday afternoon, the police headquarters, and were held overnight without bail. Police said there were signs of drug use in the apartment, and they believe the stabbing came in and about a fight over cocaine. So I'm not going to really read through all of these articles, but I just wanted to kind of touch on the information that was put out there. And you can see here the two state police officers bagged pieces of evidence in the murder investigation in Route 1 parking lot in North Attleboro. You got to remember, this is January, and you can see here there's snow on the ground. So it just goes on to talk about, what happened, what the evidence is saying at this point, and basically just kind of the first information they gave in the first article that I showed. This was in 1994. Yeah, we were 17 years old. I was 16 at the time. So we go into now. Victims sought new life. Tony wanted out. And this is where I, kind of talked about that. Tony Cardozo experimented with drugs, but he was trying to set his life straight. Several of his friends said Tuesday, all kids experience drugs, but Tony wanted out. He wanted a better life. Given more time and love, he could have a chance at a better life, said Angela. I'm not going to say the last names. Cardozo, 17, was stabbed at his mother's apartment on Sunday night and died at Sturdy Memorial Hospital, multiple wounds. The funeral will be on Friday. Cardozo was trying to resist pressure by his friends to continue using drugs, including Sunday night when he was allegedly stabbed by a friend, they said. 16 of the Rumford section of East Providence was arraigned Tuesday in Attleboro Juvenile Court in charges of first-degree murder. So that is that's one of the suspects there. And suspects held on $100,000 bail, and you can see one of the suspects' mothers here in court after the fatal stabbing. I'm not going to read all of the articles. I just wanted to kind of give you guys a brief of this story. So just some more news articles here. Friends blamed in North Attleboro murder. Just kind of goes on. Now we have a little bit more of the background of the story of what was going on during that time. And as the investigation went on, more information started to get out. I remember in this article, I'm going to read this excerpt really quick. Blank of Providence faces murder charges in Attleboro Juvenile Court in the stabbing death of Antonio Tony Cardozo, 17, of North Attleboro. Blank, who was originally charged with being an accessory, was later indicted for murder, and he pled innocent. The stabbing occurred in the kitchen of Cardozo's mother's house in the apartment of the Meadows apartment off Route 1. Cardozo died at Sturdy Memorial Hospital from multiple stab wounds. When questioned by police initially, they said a man named Beaver stabbed Cardozo, but later changed his story when they told there was security cameras in the apartment building. Really? Security cameras back then? It's like 94. Wow, that's crazy. You wouldn't even think that. Blank then blamed his friend Blank of East Providence and told people they agreed. So basically, when they got the two suspects together, one started piddling, turning on the other and so on. They wanted to distance themselves as far as they could from this, obviously, this crime. Right here, it says, showing the evidence, Attleboro Superintendent. This is not a related picture, I'm sorry. But it goes on to say, this is really crazy too. It's going to go on to just talk a little bit more about both men were 16 at the time of the murder. Police told the stabbing occurred when Blank and Cardozo started fighting in the kitchen after snorting cocaine. O'Reilly testified. So right now, the trial had been in court at this time. He heard a fight, O'Reilly testified, and then he heard Tony yelling, "No, no." After the struggle, O'Reilly said Cardozo ran out of the apartment through the back door. Blank told the police he and Blank fled out of the front door, O'Reilly said. The police officer said, found a mirror with white powder believed to be cocaine and a straw used to snort cocaine in the apartment. Later, Blank showed police where he said Blank threw the knife and they used to stab Cardozo. He said he told police, they telephoned him, making sure that the same story, they had this, their story straight, basically. It's going to go on to say there's no physical evidence. You got to think this is 94. DNA evidence is just being brought into court cases at the time. And you're going to see something here in the article, which is crazy because at this time, I don't want to spoil it yet, but when we get down, you'll see a particular case that was making a lot of headlines at the time. But, really at the cusp of DNA at that time. So, and then we get to almost 2 years out, Thursday, January 25th, 1996. And actually, I want to go back up really quick. Oh, yeah, that's what I wanted to show. And here we are, 1996. So, I mean, really at this time, the only news that we're getting, it's not like the internet, how everything is so quick now. At the touch of everything, and the information cycle is going and going and going. You think my life has been separated now. I'm not with any of those people anymore. I'm not hanging out with any of those people. I haven't talked to his mom since all of this happened. The friends that we all are have all dispersed. So the information that you're only getting is through, old-fashioned, newspaper articles. So that's what you got. Suspect acquitted in murder. Lack of testimony from killer sinks North case. I'm just trying to get to... So, blank accused of stabbing death of North Attleboro teenager found innocent of murder Wednesday after a 3-day bench trial in Attleboro Juvenile Court. They walked. One of them walked. Delinquent to be an accessory after the fact. The finding is unequivocal guilty to finding in an adult court. The case would be tried in juvenile court. Was 16 at the time, in January 30th, 1994, killing Antonio Tony Cardozo. Appealing the delinquent finding in the accessory charge to a 6-member jury and is free on bail. He declined to comment on the judge's decision. Blank sat between his sister and mother. All cried softly when lawsuit issued the verdict. Afterwards, the mother said she was very, very relieved. It's ridiculous. No, one of them didn't get convicted, Lee. They walked. You got to think, investigating back then was a lot different. There's no DNA really being used. They only had the two to corroborate their stories or go against each other. I know in one of the earlier articles, they would not testify against each other. And from what I remember, one of them got 8 years and the other guy walked. So this is interesting. If you look to the right hand of the article, look what's up there. It says Simpson, and that is the O.J. Simpson trial, because that was going on at this time. And I just found that really interesting when I was looking this over. The prosecution contended that Blank and his friend, who were also 16 at the time, so these guys are now 18 because 2 years have gone by. They ultimately admitted to being involved. And then basically what happened was there was a lack of preparedness by the prosecution, and that ended up ending in a mistrial. So there was no justice in my friend's death. And this is the last article that was ever printed about it. So, a mistrial to end North Attleboro death case. Accused accessory to be freed because of delays. The defendant charged with being an accessory in the murder of North Attleboro teenager 2 years left the courthouse Friday, assured he can no longer be prosecuted for this crime. Blank of Providence no longer is prosecuted because the failure of the district attorney's office to get the trial completed before the 19th birthday, and because the quirks in the juvenile law, which required in the case 2 trials. This is what happens when you have very, very liberal laws and when you live in very, very liberal states. People walk, people get off. So there was no justice. The co-defendant, Blank, who was 16 at the time, pled guilty. So what he had done, one of the co-defendants, what he had done was the prosecution frightened him enough where the other guy kind of rolled the dice. So basically he pled guilty to second-degree murder. He got a 15-year sentence, and I believe he only served 8. The one that got off, and if I go back, if you watch the beginning of the show, the gentleman in the middle of the picture here went after him and beat the shit out of him pretty bad. And was so torn up about it, he ended up trying to commit suicide. He made it, and it's been many, 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 many years since I've seen him. So it's just a crazy cycle of weirdness and 90s law and, just crazy stuff. So, yeah, and this is Saturday, March 9th of 1996. My birthday is on March 17th, so we got this news in 96. Defendant free in North Attleboro case. And that's it. My friend got no justice. Let me pull some of these chats up. Sorry, guys. Lee says, so young. What year? It was 94. And he didn't get convicted. One co-defendant walked. The other one, I believe, I remember, got 8 years because he made a deal with the prosecution right away and just went through the process. Chris Pepper says, so sad. Lee says, I'm sorry. Thank you so much. And yep, we've kind of went over that. I wonder what became of the suspect. Lee says, oh, wow. And then Chris says 8 years for killing someone. That's just not right at all. I completely agree. So sadly, Tony's mom passed away, I believe 3 or 4 years ago from a battle with stomach cancer. I unfortunately did not get to see her because so many years had gone by, but I know a very close mutual friend of mine did get to see her a couple of months up before she passed away. And it's just tragic all around that I look at the whole situation where you have an individual. I guess I just kind of look at this as in an adult way now and just really the reality of the situation. You had an individual that was plucked from a very problematic area. Well, not plucked, but had an opportunity out of a very problematic area. Got in with a very good home and just could never really adjust to that life. And just something about that crime life or just being around kids that have issues, or it's just such different times back then. Kids were fighting and there was crime and there's drugs and just could never pull himself away from those people. And I don't know, maybe he was just overprotective of me to keep me away from it. These are just things that I think about over the years. I've only about to visit his grave once. It's just very emotional. And real quick, just before Lee says, "Oh, she's yes, they're together. They're in heaven now." Really quick, just to kind of sum up this story and kind of end. I kind of hate saying this, ending the stream, I guess, on a, I wouldn't say positive, but um, I guess a sense of being, if I want to say that. Somewhere in early 2000, I think 2002, 2003, 2004, right around, ironically, around his birthday, um, I sat on my bed and I had this kind of, I didn't really speak or talk out, but I just said, maybe in my head or something like, I wonder how Tony's doing. I wonder how you doing, bud. And I swear, all of a sudden, I felt his presence kind of come into the room. And I had this just overwhelm of calm, this calming moment. Like, I'm okay. I'm good. And I think that was good because it kind of gave me a sense of peace for him, because I never really had those questions answered. But I did. I had this kind of overfilling feeling of his presence. And he just kind of gave me like, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm okay. And I kind of just smiled, and I definitely knew he was there. So I believe in paranormal and stuff like that, and in energy. And he definitely showed up to kind of calm me and just say, hey, bud, I'm all right. You know? So it's, Kristen says, gangs were huge in the 90s and affected young people, even if they were not involved. I remember going up to our local mall and how scary it was on like a Friday, Saturday night to even just walk through there, because people were just looking to pick fights, or just looking to like fight you, or uh, steal your, we wore starter jackets and Raiders caps, and they just try to like steal anything from you, your hat, your jacket, your shoes. I mean, it was crazy. Lee said it started in the 80s with crack too. Absolutely. Kristen's agreeing. Teresa's just answering Chris. The laws for juveniles are very difficult from the law for juveniles are very different from adults, but that was not a long sentence. Absolutely. And then Lee says, go to his grave and plant tulips for Ethan's smile, a suggestion for a reason to visit his grave. I think I'm going to do that. I have a week coming up off from work, and I'm going to be streaming a lot actually during that, but I think I'm going to take that time, and I will take that suggestion and go do that. So thank you for that, Lee. I appreciate that. And Kristen says, my starter Hoyer's jacket got stolen at gunpoint. It's nuts. Yeah, those starter jackets were huge, man. I don't know. Let me I don't know if you guys were in the chat earlier, but I'll pull up that picture again. Hang on. And then let me pull this up again. That's a great photo. God, I miss him so much. Yeah, look at this. I don't know if you saw this, Kristen. So that's me. This is 91. It's me to the left, gentleman in the middle, and then my friend Tony's in white. And the unsuspected female got scratched out in the photo. It was probably an ex-girlfriend or something like that of Tony. Troublemaker. But look at us in our Raiders gear. We had the MC Hammer pants on. But a very look at me. We're almost close to the same age here. He was just a very big physical kid, and just someone that was a protector. He protected me. These guys protected me. And look at the Everlast. I don't know what hat I'm wearing though. It was always Raiders for us. Oh my God, we were all Raiders. Everything was Raiders colors, silver, black, the silver and black. Always Raiders colors. But yeah, those were good times. It's good to go back. I like what's on the door. Welcome, friends. I don't even remember where this was. Oh, this is Tony's house. That's the front door. Okay, yep. So that would be someone took that picture from standing. He had a, like a sun porch you would walk into, and these were the doors the door that would open, and that door to the left would go down to his like cellar, and the door I think right to the right was a bathroom, if I remember. But yeah, huh. Lee says, "Look at you." She says, "I believe in the paranormal too." That could have been us. Yes, that could have been us. So, not a super long stream tonight. I just wanted to pop on and kind of share a personal experience because, listen, I've been through it. I know, we've been following a lot of the Idaho case here, Brian Koberger. I know what those families are going through. Fortunately, today in today's world, there's a lot more of grief counseling and support systems. We didn't have a lot of that back then. So I think the easiest way, I think, back then was to really just suppress a lot of that emotion and try to, I hate to say this, but move past it very quickly. But as an adult, I've been able to go back and kind of go back and grieve a little bit more and kind of sort through those feelings. And it's just, like I said, it's tragic. It's tragic all around, and it shouldn't have happened. And unfortunately, there was just no justice in the whole thing. That's what really sucks out of all of it. So my friends, that is going to end the stream for this evening. Thursday night is going to be an amazing show. Please come over and join us for the Drunk Turkeys. We will be here. We're going to talk Idaho. We're going to talk Brian Koberger. I have an amazing show lined up with those guys. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope to see all of your smiling faces there. Set your reminders. It's going to be at 8:30 Thursday night, March. What's the date on that? March 9th. I already have the reminder up. You can go over and just click the remind me button on my main page. And I hope that I see all of you there. So thank you so much for joining the stream and hanging out this evening. Let me just pull this up real quick. SC says, thank you for sharing with us. Thank you so much for being here, SC. Lee says, that's true. More help, still hard. And she says, Kristen saying, you did good. Opie, they call me Opie. Loss is a loss, no matter how much time passes. Be thankful you are someone who can still have attachment to the past. And Lee says, and you honored Tony tonight. We know who he is. Absolutely. I appreciate that. So, I appreciate everybody hanging in this evening and watching the show. And I will see you all on Thursday night. This one was tonight. This one was for you, Tony. All right, guys. Have a good night.